Hello, everyone. I just wanted to check in with you again and give you sort of my impressions of where we are and where we've been, and perhaps even where we're going. You've seen now the evolution of the early hominids and how we are connected to the rest of the world of living things through our connections with the early hominids and, of course, the whole primate order, 200 and some species of primates. And you saw then the appearance of several of those hominids in Africa. We saw that one evolves into early Homo, and then another one, the robust Australopithecine, you remember from your text, that one becomes extinct. It's at about 1 million years ago. And we've seen the movement of those hominids out of Africa, and you saw the case of the Neanderthal, where one of those, that early migration of hominids out of Africa, in one case, sort of settled into this region that we today call Europe, and now we call that Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. But you also saw that they spread east, this variety of early Homo spreading out of Africa. They also went east as far as East Asia, across sub-Himalayan Asia, so south of the Himalaya. And so there would have been populations of early Homo, Homo erectus type hominid. You can see all of the terminology in your book, of course. All the way across from the Arabian Peninsula into what is today southern Iraq, and then Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Burma, or Myanmar now, Vietnam, Southeast Asia. All those areas would have had some variety of late Homo erectus living in it after they'd spread out of Africa. Now, we know those late populations, those late Homo erectus populations, best from Europe, where we call them Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. If we had as good an archaeological and fossil record from India or Pakistan or Vietnam, we might have Homo sapiens vietnamensis or Homo sapiens indiensis, something like that, you see. The fact that or the distinctiveness of the Neanderthal is simply a result of the fact that it's easy to do field work there. That's where archaeology was invented. You just go out in your backyard sort of and start excavating. That's very different from the just sort of the logistical difficulties of doing field work in Pakistan or India or some of these other areas. The point is, you've got an initial emergence of Homo outside Africa. They settled into all of these places in sub-Himalayan Asia. You notice we haven't even got near the colonization of the Americas yet. We're coming to that. You've got this initial spread out, and then you get another one at about 100,000 years ago. You get hominids moving out of Africa a second time, and what they do is they spread in exactly the places that those previous hominids did, and they encounter those previous hominids, for example, the Neanderthals of Europe and the Near East, and what happens is that they replace them. There may have been some kind of interbreeding with them, but not a whole lot, because we don't see their Neanderthal characteristics still today. We see a little bit of perhaps genetic similarity in European populations with Neanderthal. So perhaps there was a little bit of interbreeding, but in the end, the result is that you see no more Neanderthal cultural characteristics. For example, their stone tools. The whole way of making stone tools that Neanderthals had used, it just vanishes, and it's replaced by the ways that modern humans make tools. And the whole anatomically, the fossil record also shows replacement. That is, there are no more Neanderthal characteristics. You just get Neanderthal fossils stop, and they are replaced by modern humans. And of course, now we have the genetic evidence. So 3 independent lines of evidence, all suggesting replacement rather than a really substantial sort of intermingling of Neanderthal and modern human populations. Now, again, we know that really well in Europe because we have such a great record there. It appears the same thing happened in these other places, all the way across to Southeast Asia. The same kind of replacement would have happened, and so we see this second emergence out of Africa and replacement of all the hominids that had been out there prior. You know, that's over 10,000 years, and it's across millions of square acres of landscape. So in some places, maybe there was a lot more interbreeding, and in other places there was actual competition and actual violence or fighting in the replacement of the species. all the finest details of that are not well known. But what is very well known is that all those archaic forms that went out in the first wave of migration out of Africa, they become replaced genetically, skeletally, archaeologically, culturally. They become replaced by the second wave out of Africa, which is the wave of modern humans. These are the humans that are carrying the minds, you remember, that created cave art. I showed all that cave art, or talked about all that cave art. The real difference between that second wave out of Africa and the first wave is what's going on in the mind. And that has to do with the complexity of thought, the possibilities of language, deep symbolism versus shallow symbolism. I talked about all that in the lectures. There's a very short chapter in your book that is called it even has the word cognition in there, but the emergence of modern cognition. But they actually don't address that very well. It's very new, and they're not really, the authors really aren't tracking that material very carefully. But I talked about it a lot in the audio lectures, so if you haven't heard those, you might want to have a look at them. I'm just going to check the tape and see if I still have time. I do. Now we're getting on to the origins of a completely different way of life for most people worldwide, and this is the origins of agriculture and what this is going to, the effects that it's going to have, which are going to be the invention essentially of what we call civilization or state-level societies. You've seen pictures and you've heard an audio lecture, I hope, about the structuring effect of subsistence on the shape of the society, the shape of the culture. The way that people get their calories and their nutrients and their water, the way that you have to arrange your movement on a landscape, or if you're growing it, not moving it, but still scheduling your activities, that kind of thing. The way that you fulfill those basic ecological requirements of the human body has a lot to do, or has a structuring role in the shape of your society, the way that your society plays out, such that highly mobile foraging societies, think of Arctic hunters, for example, they move across vast landscapes. Well, that plays out in their system of morality, even their system of cultural rules for what's appropriate behavior. For example, they have the well-known voluntary suicide ethos up there, which is that it is not a bad thing to kill oneself if you're a burden to society. If you're a burden, old people who recognize that times are hard and they can't, they are consuming calories, but they're unable, they've got an injury or something, they're unable to help out. It is expected of them, and it's a good thing for them to pick up and walk away, take a walk away from camp, get on an ice floe and just float away, and then they expire out there. That's not considered a calamity or a disaster or a horrible thing. That's considered a just act by that person. So there's a case where an adaptation to that world, a cultural adaptation to that world, has to do with their subsistence behavior. You're going to see now major changes in subsistence behavior that accompany the origins of agriculture, the use of basically growing or raising plants and animals that have been captured from the wild and are now totally under human control. All right, that's pretty much it. Keep an eye on it. This is a big change coming now after 4 million years of foraging. Now we go into farming, and we're going to see the origins of our kind of lifestyle, or the civilization that we live in today. All right, good. I will talk to you next time.